But let's kind of shift gears a little bit. I wanted to talk about another player. Deommodore Lenoir has absolutely shined early on in both training camp and now in the preseason as well. But Kobe, what are your initial thoughts on Lenoir?
So the first time I started to really kind of pay more attention to Lenore was early on in camp where people were saying Ambry Thomas was looking a step behind Deommodore Lenoir. And it was like, okay, Lenoir so far, he's picked 2 rounds later. So you're kind of thinking, okay, maybe he's the guy who needs some time to get better. And Thomas will be that guy who likely is able to contribute a little bit sooner. But it's really flipped. And Lenoir is the guy who seems a little more ready. And so far, I guess from per PFF that came out today, he was targeted 6 times or has been targeted 6 times in coverage and hasn't allowed to catch yet. And we've seen through the 2 games, even in the Chiefs game, he was on Tyreek Hill because obviously the starters didn't play in that game, but the Chiefs, first team did play for the first 2 drives. We saw he was on Tyreek Hill for a bit and held his zone. Wasn't really targeted much, but he was solid in coverage, and then he was solid in coverage throughout the rest of that game. Um, and then he was nice again in this Charger game. Had a good pass defense in that first drive, and he had good coverage the rest of the game. So with Emmanuel Mosley, obviously, he missed the beginning of the camp, came back. He looked solid. Obviously hasn't played in the game yet because they've been keeping the starters out, but they will play in the Raiders game. Lenoir, right now, in what is seen as more of a weak spot for the Niners at cornerback, seems like he could at least, as of right now, be a solid backup, a guy maybe he's the first man up if God forbid for Verrett goes down or Mosley misses time for any reason. Um, and if he improves to play this way, maybe there's a chance that he could find his way into the starting lineup if Mosley is struggling in any kind of way. Because we know last season he wasn't great in man coverage. Mosley wasn't, and we'll see if that continues to be a thing this season. Obviously, he's had more time to prepare for it, knowing that D'Amico Ryans might run more man coverage than Saleh did, and Saleh ran a lot more man last year, but we know he was mostly known for the zone, and that's where Mosley had his best season when the pass rush was elite and he had playing his zone coverage. But if right now, Demo looks good in man coverage, and if Mosley does falter at some point this season, I think the Niners may give him a shot.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I personally think it could be a little bit sooner than later. I do like Emmanuel Mosley. I think he's a solid player, but like you were kind of talking about Lenoir potentially being like that first corner off the bench, I think that's the best spot for Eman because he can come in and play any spot on the field and kind of just be a plug and play guy. And I think that like he's best suited there. I do think like on a really good defense, I guess.
Yeah.
Is it like a big issue that he's the number 2 cornerback? No, I don't think it is. But I think Lenoir is looking really good early on. He looks really sticky in coverage, and you're talking about how last year we saw them run a little bit more man, and I felt like a lot of that was because not like they're limited into running man, but I always felt like having Jason Verrett and Akella Weatherspoon on the field, like especially at the end of the year,
Yeah.
those two guys are really good in man coverage, so it allowed them to do that. Where Lenoir is probably like he can hold his own in when he's in zone coverage. Like I feel like that's what Oregon like to do a lot with him. Um, but E-Man's a lot more suited for zone than I feel like he is for when he's in man. Like he gets kind of abused when he has to go up against like top tier receivers, which
Right.
a lot of corners do. But like you're talking about Lenoir, like early on, he looks like his skills translate more to like a man corner spot. And we saw last year, even when the Niners weren't generating that much pass rush at the end of the season, because I mean, we should expect them to generate a ton more pass rush this year than they
Oh
did
yeah.
last year. And so I think you're going to see like the ability to be more like to be able to run man also when that pass rush is doing really well and being able to switch out and constantly just run a lot of different types of stuff in the defensive backfield. Like I like that a lot more. I just think it makes the defense a little bit more versatile. Because I think Jason Verrett is I think he's probably the I mean yeah, he's definitely the best man coverage corner on the team. But if
Oh
he's
yeah.
going to be the one, you definitely want the guy opposite him able to do it well. And I think Lenoir does it a little bit, or I think he will like at least like within maybe a month into the year. I think he'll be better suited for that cornerback 2 spot.
Yeah, and we'll see because I'm sure Verrett. We saw it last season. Where he would just defend the best receiver on the field, and we didn't see that. Obviously, he didn't start in that Cardinals game week 1, where we saw Emmanuel Mosley get abused by DeAndre Hopkins, and obviously Sherman wasn't going to switch sides of the field and defend Hopkins in every snap. He's never done that. He probably never will do that um, if he does return to the league. But obviously, whoever is that second corner is going to have the easier matchup. While Verrett handles the best receiver for the team. And if he's able to stay sticky in coverage and you get that pass rush going, and Verrett is it's locking down their best target, and then you have whoever's second corner having solid man coverage, it's not allowing guys to get wide open. It's going to this defense is it can be really good, and just the talent. Obviously, I voiced maybe some concerns over what exactly should be expected of this defense, knowing that D'Amico Ryan's is the first year play caller as a defensive coordinator. But when you have the talent that he has, obviously Solid didn't have that talent when he first got here. If they're able to have that pass rush really be back to where it was, close to 2019, if not potentially being the same or maybe better because of the depth. Um, yeah, if they're able to have guys who are sticky in man coverage along with that rush, coming at you, and you have less than 2.5 seconds to throw, this defense can be very, very scary, and it could be, could definitely makes this team, one of the best in the league easily.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think one area where D'Amico might be a little bit like farther along than a lot of other first time defensive coordinators is that he did play Mike Backer. So he has
Right.
called the plays, which I mean, he's not the one like calling them in, but he is the guy on the receiving end of that. So he does have experience like, being in Fred Warner's position, which I think it allows him to see the defense from a little bit of a different lens. Not that like all defensive coordinators can't, really understand like the defense, but like of course they can, but it's about like seeing it from that middle linebacker spot where I think that'll allow him and Fred to really flourish. So I do think that's something that's a little bit different, but I'm really excited for this defense. I think, but ultimately, I do think Lenoir does give them the best shot of doing that. And just a quick question: Was he the guy that was he friends with Richard Sherman? And he was talking about how he tried to base his game off, or was that Ambry Thomas?
No, I think it was Lenore with the connections to Sherman. Yeah, it was Lenore.
Okay, because he was talking about how he really liked like almost like the violence of Sherman's game, and we've seen that at the line of scrimmage. He is an incredibly violent player at the line of scrimmage. And so I couldn't remember if it was him or Ambry Thomas, but I noticed that was something that is a lot similar to Sherman's game of really.
Yeah, and he had that clip in OTAs that got the Niners in trouble, but where he absolutely pressed the mess out of Austin Watkins, and he just had him locked up, and it was like, geez, that man is aggressive at the point of attack. And yeah, just to finish up on Lenore, just it's nice to see someone in the cornerback room playing well, because we've had our concerns, and it's like, okay, if things go bad, what do we do? Like, do we need to trade for somebody? Do we need to sign somebody? BW Webb hasn't been the best. He's had some penalties, and he's been picked on in coverage at times. So they brought him in late, and I was like, and we've seen he hasn't really been much. Um, but if you have at least one guy, or if one of your starting corners go down and he can kind of hold it down, not really be like a shutdown corner, but just a guy who isn't going to just allow big plays consistently, a guy who can just get picked on. So far, that guy's been Thomas of the two of Lenoir and Ambry Thomas. Thomas has been the guy who's been picked on a bit, um, in these preseason games. We saw he gave it the deep pass. It's a nice throw by Stick, though. It's a very nice throw. But it's just of the two, we haven't seen Lenoir allow that, but we've seen Thomas get beat quite a few times here in these two games. And as long as one of those guys works out, I think it's good for the Niners.
Yeah, that's probably the thinnest spot of probably the entire team, maybe outside of like guard. Um, because I mean, that's you're kind of banking on one of those guys, like you're saying, one of those guys being the fourth corner coming out of the draft. And luckily, Lenoir's been that guy because Ambry Thomas. But I also think that it was kind of expected that he might not quite be ready just because he also didn't play in 2020.
Right,
Um,
and that's kind of what I thought about when I saw he was struggling. And maybe it's going to take him a little bit more time to get back up to speed. Just taking a year off, and obviously people had those same concerns for Trey Lance, but it seems not to be much of an issue for him. He's able to to work out those kinks pretty quickly. But for Ambry Thomas, the talent was there. Many people thought that if he played last season, he'd be a higher pick. Just because he's able, he's good in press man coverage. Another reason why they brought him in. Just two guys who are good in man coverage. But could be that year off, just not playing football for a year, and obviously just missing out time to improve. And he's just probably just a step behind. So obviously, I'm not too concerned about Thomas right now. Just knowing the information, if he had played 2 years, the two full seasons, and then came in looking like this, and you'd be like, okay, but as long as he continues to get better, I think you'll be fine. But that could also be why Deommodore Lenoir looks like he's a bit further along because he had all that play time and Thomas is coming off a year off, and so maybe it might be too early to worry about Thomas, but at least Lenoir is picking up the slack.
That's how I feel as well. I do think that like Thomas is in a rough spot. I also was seeing some things that they kind of viewed him as a bigger project player than Lenoir, even though they took him earlier, which was interesting. Just because like I don't know, you usually expect that the day two guys are the guys that are going to be instant impact, but I mean it's not always the case. So I definitely like the Lenoir pick a lot right now, though. So I'm very happy about that. Not giving up on Ambry Thomas, it would be way too early to do something like
Yeah.
that.
Hey, I
Um,
mean, Thomas might be the new Kelly Witherspoon. Hopefully, it just goes right this time.
yeah, that it goes up. um, but yeah, I think that'll probably do it. I want to say thanks again, Kobe, for hopping on. It was really fun talking some 49ers football. Getting to talk about Trey Lance, Deommodore Lenoir, and really just this Niners team as a whole. But I want to say thanks again for coming on.
Hey, man, no problem. Anytime. I told you last time, just hit me up whenever you want to chat it up, and I'm down.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much, and thanks everyone for listening. And I'll be back talking 49ers football tomorrow.